Okay, so first and foremost thing is, many students think that economics is very difficult, but first I want to make it very clear that economics is very interesting and very easy to understand, provided you understand the concepts. So always remember, whenever we are dealing with economy as a subject, concepts are very, very important. So what I mean by concepts is understanding the concept rather than just mugging up facts. So once the concepts are clear, you can understand newspaper well, you can integrate things well. And always remember, we have to learn from outside. Outside in the sense, any concept which we are trying to understand from the book, we have to link it up to whatever is happening around us. We have to make observations around us to see really like whether this concept works or not. So that is how we have to learn economics, and that's how you can remember economics well. So this is one very important aspect which I wanted to make it very clear to all of you. So first of all, the subject is not at all difficult. The subject is very, very simple and not audible. Is it audible? Everybody? Audible, okay, okay. Somebody has, okay, okay, fine. Okay, okay. Purna, full view, full view. Yes. Okay, okay. Fine. Fine. Sorry. So now, two things here. One is, as far as our economy is concerned, so these 3 days we'll be discussing basics of Indian economy, and we'll try to understand, okay, the basic concepts. So whenever I deal with economics, what we will be doing is around somewhere around 15 to 20 hours we'll be spending on only understanding basics. Basics in the sense, we'll try to learn all the keywords in the format of story. So this is my approach basically for any class. So basics, when I say basics is not with respect to a particular topic or a particular area. Basics is with respect to the whole subject of economy. So once the whole subject of economy basics are done, then automatically we can get into the core concepts, which will be very, very simple. Okay, so this will be my approach always. So first 7 to 8 days, around 15 to 15 hours, we'll be discussing basics, understanding basics. It includes NCERT, it includes concepts, it includes all the basics which are needed for Indian economy. And once we are strong with the basics, we can also solve prelims questions. Along with that, we can also understand the other areas of economy very well. So this would be the approach. This is my approach. And coming to the importance of the subject. So Indian economy will be useful, first of all, in prelims, around 20 questions you will get, around 20 questions number wise. Okay. So whether it is 20, 22 questions, and remember, it is like maths in the sense, if the concepts are clear, we can at least get 18 out of 20 questions right in the prelims. So this is something very, very important because the return on effort is very high. As an economics teacher, I always talk about return on investment. So when you're putting in so much of effort, so what is the probability of getting things right? Okay, so unlike other subjects, I'm not saying other subjects you can't score, but economics is like maths in the sense, like once you know the concept, there is no chance of going wrong. So like that, out of questions, out of 20, at least 18 questions will be in a position to mark it right in the prelims. So the weightage, 18 to 22 questions you get in the prelims as far as Indian economy is concerned. That is one thing which you have to understand. Then coming to mains. Okay, so there is paper 3. Okay, so in paper 3, out of 20 mains questions, around 8 to 11 questions. Okay, in fact, if you include agriculture also, around 11 to 12 questions, including agriculture, in paper 3 will be from Indian economy and agriculture. Remember this. So that means it's a huge weightage, around 110 to 120 marks plus in the mains in paper 3 alone. This is one more important thing which we should understand. Then another important aspect is the essay paper. So every year, if you see essay paper, there will be at least 1 or 2 economic topics to be written. Okay, so today we will discuss that also. Like once you learn a particular concept, if there is an essay related to that particular concept, how are you going to do it? Okay, for example, there was an essay last year. It says poverty anywhere is threat to prosperity everywhere. I'm repeating it. Poverty anywhere is threat to prosperity everywhere. Now, this was one topic. So it can be related to economy. You can relate it to something like Indian society. So, but essay, when we are talking about essay, it's not just about the concept. Along with the concept, you should be thinking in 360 degrees. Okay, so this thinking of 360 degrees and all, I will be discussing a little while later. For everything, first of all, basics should be clear. Okay, for example, earlier in 2015, there was this essay which says, can capitalism be made inclusive? Okay, so this was an economics essay. So capitalism is a word, you know, so I'll discuss that today. So can capitalism be made inclusive? This was the essay. So once the words are clear, once the concepts are clear, then only we can brainstorm our thinking. Then only we can brainstorm our. Okay, so can capitalism be made inclusive was one essay. So like this, another important area. So essay basically, if you see 150 to 160 marks, you can score in essay. So another area where economy plays a crucial role is the essay. So essay component, very, very important, almost like it is half the optional score. Okay, so therefore scoring 150 and 160 you can do. In that, economics plays a crucial role because every year you will have at least one or two essays which are economy related. So therefore, when you're trying to read newspaper, when you're trying to understand syllabus, you also have to think it from this dimension also. Okay. Then another important aspect is coming to the interview. So any interviewer, especially if you are marking IRS as your first or the second option, so obviously they will ask about economic dimensions, economic dynamics of economics in the present scenario. For example, because of COVID, right now Indian economy is not doing well and there's huge amount of unemployment. Many people have gone below poverty line. Should government focus on privatization or should government give support? Should government help people by giving them subsidies or giving them something like free schemes? Okay, so or should government support industrialists so that they will create jobs? So everything is something like a dilemma for the government when government does not have money. So during COVID crisis, when economy is not doing well, so money is not coming into government's pocket. So government's hands are tied. No, government cannot spend on every possible aspect. So where government has to spend. So these kind of questions on the practical note, they can ask in the exam. So do you think privatization is a very good thing which India can do right now? Suppose you talk about our present government. So Modi ji's government is too much interested in privatizing everything. So they may ask you a question like, you have crisis like COVID, India's health sector is not doing well. Okay, or as far as education sector is there, government spending is very limited. Are out of the pocket, that means we spend from our pocket. Around 60-61% of health spending is out of the pocket expenditure. That means we are spending from our own pocket. Unlike other countries like developed countries like US, where insurance policies are there, their out of the pocket spending is very, very less. But in a poor country like India, we have to spend money from our pocket. Now, this is a big challenge. Okay, so that means, is it that government is doing the right thing? Or do you think government's health infrastructure is bad or government is not spending adequately on health? So these things actually have to be focused on. So like this, they will ask question, they can ask question from any dimension. Suppose we talk about job creation, okay? Or you talk about artificial intelligence. Many of you know big data, artificial intelligence, etc. Okay, now automation is on the go. So when you're trying to automate things, when you're trying to come up with digitalization, automation, automatically job losses will be there. I'll talk about that. For example, any industry, for example, let's say now educational institutions are coming up with tablets, isn't it? Like Byju's and all. Now, if this tablet, school tablets like Byju tab, if it can replace the school teacher, now school teachers are frustrated. Now, because of COVID, there is a problem, there's job losses. Now, if Byju can market his tab well, okay, that means, is it the machine that is going to replace the teacher? A simple example to talk about automation. So there will be job losses also that can happen, So like this, from multiple angles in the interview, there can be questions which they can ask. Okay, so therefore, we also have to focus on these things. Like in the interview, what are the areas they can ask? So another important area where economics helps you is the interview. So prelims, around 20 questions. In the mains, paper 3, 10 to 12 questions from economy and agriculture. In essay, again, every year, there is at least 1 or 2 essays coming from Indian economy component. And then in the interview, definitely you have to answer questions on economics or current dimensions of economics. The current economy, whatever is there, they will ask you questions on those. So like this, it is in one of the schools of Bangalore, they introduced robot as a teacher. Okay, very good. Good. Okay. So see, tomorrow you don't need a robo also. Everything can be automation. I'll talk about it. Okay, fine. So this is how it is. Okay. So moving forward with the subject. Now getting into the subject. Now everybody has understood, I think, enough of what has to be done. That is the importance of the subject. Now talking about economy as such. Okay. There are different economic theories. Okay. So there are certain societies which we call them as capitalistic societies. And there are certain societies which we call them as socialistic societies. So here I'm talking about two different words. So one is basically I'm using the word capitalism, and another is I'm using the word socialism. My first question to you all, you can put it in the chat. Okay, you can speak out also, but you put it in the chat. So India in the present scenario, which one is better? Is it capitalism that is better, or is it socialism that is better? Okay, so capitalism, or is it socialism that is better? And I know that some of you may not be knowing what is this capitalism, what is this socialism, etc. Okay, so some students are giving intelligent answers like mixed economy. Very good. Okay, socialism is better. Okay, mixed social. Nice economy. What is nice economy? I think capitalism. Okay, in COVID time, socialism. Okay, fine. Good. So first and foremost, now if we try to observe the innovations across the globe, okay, so take the examples of the best entrepreneurs who talk about innovation. For example, whether it is the Tesla, everybody knows about Tesla car, or I think you know about SpaceX, we know about Steve Jobs, okay, or the Microsoft owner. So when we talk about any innovation, okay, so we find these innovations are coming from purely capitalistic societies. Before I explain what is capitalism, like countries like UK, US, you find that there is a lot of scope for research. There is a lot of scope for innovation. And these are purely capitalistic countries. So here, that means innovation is coming from those countries where there is something called as freedom to do business. If you don't have freedom to do business, you cannot expect innovation. That much is clear. You cannot expect innovation if there is no freedom to do business. Okay, so that benefit is there. A simple example is we have Warren Buffett. I think most of you know Warren Buffett. Everybody knows Warren Buffett, right? Everybody knows Warren Buffett. Yes. Okay. Yes. So Warren Buffett, you all know, right? So Warren Buffett was once. Okay. Do you think it is your talent, intelligence, that today you have become one of the richest man, or is it some kind of luck, that luck favored you and therefore you became rich? Now, this was the question which was asked in an interview. Now, for this question, Warren Buffett answer was very simple. He said, keeping talent aside, keeping intelligence aside, I was born in a country where I had access to learn about finance. I had access to great teachers who taught him about stock markets. So when other countries like India, we were fighting for freedom struggle. We were fighting for freedom struggle. We were fighting for survival. We were fighting for basic liberty. But that is a time when Warren Buffett could invest his time and learn about stock market. So stock markets is something which is very big for us even today in India. But Warren Buffett, in those days, when other countries were fighting for freedom, he had the leverage, he had the advantage. Now that is luck. If Warren Buffett would have been born in Afghanistan, then the scope, there's no luck there. Then comes his talent, his intelligence, etc., where he has learned several things, and therefore he was. Now this is very important, that there should be a combination of both. Voice is not clear. Okay. US business magnet. 1 second, man, changing the battery. Give me 1 second, please. Blink out. Okay, voice is clear. Okay, fine. Okay, so I think till here it is clear. Okay, so it clearly shows that innovation and all was coming from only those countries where there is freedom to do business, or where there is less government control. So when I'm using the word capitalism, one thing comes to our mind is private sector is predominant. Private sector is predominant. Okay. And government's interference is minimum. Government's interference is minimum. It blink outundi. Government's voice is not clear. బ్యాటరీ ఛార్జింగ్ లేవా? అది బ్లింక్ అవుతుందంటే Is the voice clear now? Voice is getting low at sometimes. Okay, now is it okay? Okay. ఇది ఇట్లా బ్లింక్ అవుతుందంటే ఛార్జింగ్ లేదండి, ఛార్జింగ్ పెట్టేసి ఛార్జింగ్. Okay, fine. So now, so whenever I'm talking about capitalism, it means market or government's interference is going to be limited. There is more freedom for private sector to do business. The government will not decide how much you have to sell and at what price you have to sell. Government will not decide. Okay. So then if government is not deciding the amount of production or the amount of or the price at which you are selling, if government is not deciding, then who is going to decide? Anybody? So in capitalism, private player is given freedom, government's interference is minimum. Okay, government is not going to decide how much you are going to produce. Government is not going to decide how much, at what price you are going to sell. Then who is going to decide what are you going to sell and how much, at what price you are going to sell? So it is going to be decided by an aspect called market. Now somebody has written that there. So they have written this word called market. So market is nothing but, a simple definition of market is, it is a place where buyers and sellers meet. It is a place where buyers and sellers meet. That is what is market. So Amazon is a marketplace. Amazon is a marketplace. Amazon is a marketplace where buyers and sellers are meeting. So here Amazon is not producing products. Amazon is a kind of an intermediate entity where you have buyers and sellers who are coming and buying. So market is a place where buyers and sellers meet. And when buyers and sellers are meeting, the prices are going to be determined based on demand and supply. Remember, so here, two words here. One is demand, I've written. Okay, the price will be decided by demand is one word. Another word here I'm writing here is supply. Don't worry, today in the first class, I'll not be drawing any graphs. No question of drawing the graph will not confuse you. But remember, here it is about demand and supply. So when I'm referring to market, it is nothing but a place where buyers and sellers meet, and there will be, the price will be determined based on demand and supply. So when I'm talking about a concept called demand, okay, a demand for a product, a demand for a service will play a crucial role in terms of deciding the price. Now, always remember, whenever I'm talking about demand, it is not just about the desire to buy a product. You may be having the desire to buy Rolls-Royce, but the most important aspect is not the desire, but it is the ability to pay. You don't have the ability to pay. Your salary is 50,000 per month and you are thinking about Rolls-Royce. That means there is no point. So if today you have big showrooms of Bentley and all coming into Bangalore, Hyderabad or Mumbai, it means that there are people who not only desire to buy such cars, but they also have the ability to pay. So whenever you're talking about demand, it's very, very important that along with the decision or desire to buy a product, you should also understand that you should have the paying capacity. You should have the purchasing power. Somebody has written purchasing power. I don't want to use words now. So it is something like, it's not about desire to buy, but it is also ability to pay. Now, one more observation, if you see, now during COVID crisis, obviously salaries have gone down, people have lost their jobs. Therefore, obviously one observation is demand for products will not be there. That much is clear. Demand for products will not be there. When demand for products is not there, then the producers who are producing products, the businessmen who are producing products may not produce products. Simple logic, no. When there is demand only, they will produce. And when there is no demand, they're not going to produce the product. And when they're not going to produce the product, they don't need people. They need not recruit people because you're not producing. So you don't need labor. So that is when there will be retrenchment of labor. That is when you kick out labor from the industry. People will start losing jobs. This is how it happens. Now, when people start losing jobs, what will happen? They will not get salaries. Means again, there will be a problem with respect to their paying capacity, their ability to pay, or their purchasing power. Their paying capacity or purchasing power will not be there. When purchasing power is not there, again, demand will not be there. Are you able to get this point? So it's a chain. It's a change. So because of COVID, if salaries are going down, people's consumption, their ability to consume products is going to reduce. So that means what will happen? Demand for products is going to decrease. Okay, so when demand for products is going to decrease, okay, so what is the problem here? Demand is going to come down. Okay, so when demand for products is going to reduce, automatically what will happen? Production. Those who are producing, businessmen, they will not produce. When they're not producing, what I'm trying to say is, when they're not producing, obviously when production is not there, then you'll not recruit people. That means there will be retrenchment of labor. Jobs will not be there. So when jobs are not there, automatically jobs are not there, then paying capacity, that means what? Again, purchasing power, their ability to buy products or purchasing power will be less. So when purchasing power is going to be less, then again, obviously there will not be demand. So when there is no demand, there is no production, and continuously you will find people are losing jobs. So during COVID, this is one scenario which you can observe because there is no demand. There need not be demand because people do not consume. So like this, the cycle can be there. And because of this, you will have problems. I hope it is clear. Everybody is able to follow, and I hope the voice is also okay now. Okay, so this is what I think this approach you have understood. So everybody is understood in capitalism. Okay, whatever prices or whatever is the production, it is going to be decided based on the forces of market. Now here, when I'm referring to forces of market, I am talking about demand and supply. Forces of market means I'm referring to demand and supply. Okay, so price will be decided based on demand and supply. How much I will produce will also be decided based on demand. Government will not tell produce 1,000 scooters, produce 1 lakh cars. Government is not going to decide. It is basically the forces of market. So when I'm referring to forces of market, I am referring to demand and supply. Today, I'm not going to draw any graphs related to demand, related to supply. So just try to understand the concept. Okay, so in capitalism, we will find that the private sector is going to be above the public sector. So private sector, you can see there, will be above the public sector in the sense that private sector will be running the economy. So the economic fundamentals or the economy of a country is run by the private sector. Government will not completely, or government will not drive the economy. Government will only be like a facilitator. It will facilitate things. It will set norms. It will give guidelines. But government will not be running businesses. So in the recent budget, our finance minister's first statement was, government has no business to stay in business. Government has no business to stay in business. This was the line which she used. Okay, so government has no business to stay in business means present government is looking towards, moving towards complete capitalism. Not complete in the sense, yes, they want to focus on market economy. They want to give complete freedom to private players to do business. And they believe that government is only going to regulate things. Government will think of welfare. Government will set norms and guidelines. Government will be a facilitator. Government will not run businesses. That is a clear indication by the finance ministry, by the finance minister, or by the Madam Nirmala Sitharaman Madam. When she's saying, so it is private sector which is going to be predominant in capitalistic societies. Private sector is going to drive the economy. I hope till here you have understood. Okay, in capitalism, private sector is predominant. Number one, freedom to do business is there, obviously. Okay, government interference in terms of economic fundamentals is going to be minimum. Government will not interfere. Government will not say, you sell so many cars, you sell so much of rice at this price. Government will not interfere with respect to economics. Okay, so till here, I hope things are clear. Okay, so here if you see, in market economy, okay, so what am I referring here? Market economy is one thing which is the word which I used here. Okay, so when I'm talking about market economy, one is demand and supply. You can see that, of course, demand and supply. There is free regulation, means government regulation will be minimum. Government will not interfere every now and then with respect to business fundamentals. In India, still, you know that unless and until you have your political party, you cannot do business freely. Whichever political party comes to power, is their related business people flourish in India, unless and until you are like the Reliance or the bigger industries. This is how in India things are even today. We'll talk about that a little later. Okay, so production, everything is based on demand and supply. Everything is based on demand and supply when it comes to market. Now, one question to you all. Are there any problems of market economy? Like this, you're running based on market economics. Do you think there will be any problems with respect to market economy? You can push it in the chat. Yes. Rich become rich, poor become poor. Okay. Yes, people's buying capacity. Okay, okay. If government regulations aren't followed, might can affect income disparity. Okay, fine, fine. Got the point. So here, let's take India. India just after independence. Take the case of India just after independence. Okay. So just after independence, Nehruji, in spite of being Western educated, see, Nehruji looks like more like a foreigner. He is Western educated, but still he did not adopt principles of pure market. He did not adopt principles of capitalism straight in India. Remember this. We did not adopt principles of capitalism straight into India because if you observe, let's take an example. Everything runs based on market. Okay. Now, market runs based on demand. That means market runs based on wants. Wants are different from need. Want is different, needs are different. For example, I am hungry. I need some basic meal, some roti. But I want to eat KFC burger is a want. I want to reach my destination. I'm traveling. I may use a motorcycle or a cycle. But I want to travel only in Audi is a want. There is a difference between want and a need. In capitalism, needs are sold as wants. In capitalism, needs are sold as, you don't even realize that, sorry, in capitalism, wants are sold as needs. That means it's a want, but you feel it as a need. Simple logic. When somebody is selling his kidney for an iPhone, in China, that fellow has done it. So to get that new iPhone, he sold his kidney. He believed that iPhone is a need or a necessity. Now, this is what capitalism can do. Now, when we talk about hunger, when you talk about basic necessities, okay, it's a need. But the problem is, in a country like India, just after independence, handling needs itself was a challenge. Forget about wants. Because after freedom struggle, our economy was bad. Okay, life expectancy was less. We are bad in education, bad in health, no purchasing power. Our private sector was not developed to handle bigger industries, etc. Just after independence, this was the situation. Then under such circumstances, government had to handle needs. For example, when we talk about needs, okay, so if you see, suppose in Dantewada district in Chhattisgarh, it's a Naxal prone area. Everybody needs mobile phones there. Okay, but if Airtel is not interested to go to Dantewada, why? Because the threat is high. Okay, so they'll not be going. But is there a need for using mobile phones there? The need is more because they are living in a insecure place or an Naxal prone area. That is when BSNL will do its job. Just understand this. Need is always different from want. Okay, so for example, everybody needs basic health care. The bigger super specialty hospitals may not be interested in going to rural areas. Simple logic. Why? There is no demand. Why there is no demand? Because they do not have the paying capacity. But do you think there is a need there? Definitely there is need for good health care. There is a need for good schools. There is a need for good institutions in rural areas. But you can't expect everybody to go to rural areas and start setting up the business units because there is no market. There is no demand. Simple logic. But there's no market means there's no demand, but there is a need. Then who is going to handle or facilitate or fulfill these needs? So that is where capitalism can fail. That is where capitalism can fail. I think you are able to understand. Coca-Cola is not a need. Coca-Cola is a want. But when I was driving to the rural areas of Kerala, I was on a tour, I could see that water was not available, but Coca-Cola bottles were available in the nook and corner, every nook and corner of tribal districts also. Coke was available. This is what you should understand. And Coke uses water. The resources, water resources are used. Water is not available, but Coca-Cola and Thumbs Up bottles are available. Now, this is something we should understand about capitalism. Okay, so capitalism is good only, but at the same time, there are some problems of capitalism. Okay, so if you see here, this is IPL. So here are some problems of capitalism. On one side, you can see the way the cricket used to be in India. There is a complete change in definition of cricket. Okay, this is a clear indication of capitalism or business houses running the game called cricket. Okay, on the other side, you can see there's huge amount of poverty. People are starving. There is malnutrition, etc. So there are two corners which you can observe when it comes to capitalism. Always remember this. Okay, so if you see, there are businessmen like Mark Zuckerberg who have earned billions because of capitalism. You have the Amazon owner, but at the same time, in capitalism, you could find you have great superstars like our Vijay Mallya, okay, who could run away, and they can be responsible for huge amount of money which is getting wasted, and they can be responsible for this poverty. Okay, some are suffering with respect to basic needs, and some are eating away crores of rupees, and there is no law to catch them. Now, this is how it is in capitalism. The game of cricket, you're spending so much. The definition of game has changed in form of IPL. And at the same time, there are people who have become very rich. Now, this is how you can see capitalism from different shades. You can see capitalism from different shades. So I think you're able to understand that capitalism, though it is market is driving, innovation is there. You'll have Teslas, you'll have people like Steve Jobs, you have companies like Apple. Okay, all this happens because of free market, because of business, because of capitalism. But at the same time, in certain countries, okay, where you're trying to push capitalism, you will have problems. And definitely just this picture will give you a complete idea with respect to, okay, so what capitalism can do. In fact, I hope it is clear. Okay, so we'll not talk about Vijay Mallya now. We'll not talk about poverty now because it's a first intro and a basics class. So I'm not interested in talking about them, but I think you have an idea like what they have done. So on one side, billions of dollars. On one side, you have billions of dollars which Mark Zuckerberg is making, and there's loss of privacy and etc. Facebook, and I'll talk about that later. But at the same time, now who is going to address countries like India or sub-Saharan African nations where people are still struggling for a basic meal? Now, this is the challenge which the capitalism has to handle. I hope this is clear. Okay, so I think till here things are clear for everybody. Now, just a second, I want you all to see this diagram also. Okay, so this is the heights of capitalism. So when we talk about capitalism, first of all, free market. Economy is run by forces of market. When I'm saying forces of market, forces of demand and supply. Okay. Government regulation is minimum. That means government will not tell you how much you have to produce, what you have to produce, and what price you have to sell. Okay. That innovation is high, no doubt, because when you have freedom only, okay, so only then you will try to innovate because you want to make profits. You will show your intelligence and talent when you're given freedom, and your innovation will pay you. Okay, so therefore innovation is always there. But at the same time, capitalism can also create some problems because capitalism is addressing wants but not needs. Capitalism runs on the logic of profit motive. You want to earn more and more profit, and there is no upper limit for profit. Now, the problem is few economists, in fact, one of the most famous thinker for capitalism is Adam Smith. Now, what Adam Smith says clearly is capitalism. Okay, Adam Smith has written a book called Wealth of Nations. Okay, in his book also he says wealth above individuals. What he tries to explain is everybody, everything in this world runs on the logic of self-interest. Now, very, very important point he tries to make, and it is true also. Now, some students are, he is selfish, she is selfish. Everybody is selfish, and that is the reason we have survived till now. Otherwise, how come a human being who is the weakest entity when compared to other animals was able to survive and is able to rule the world today is because of this self-interest only. So what Adam Smith tries to explain is this aspect of self-interest is the aspect or a bedrock principle, basically, through which this capitalism runs. So I'm talking about self-interest here. So what Adam Smith says is everybody works with self-interest, and this individual self-interest has led to societal benefit. Now, this is what Adam Smith says. This is self-interest is the bedrock principle for capitalism. Everybody should understand this. Self-interest is the bedrock principle for capitalism. For example, a simple logic I'll try to explain. We have different factors of production. You want to produce. If there is a firm, there are different, what are the things you need? You need a land. You need land for doing business. You need labor for working. You need capital to set up the business. If you want to set up the business, you need capital. Labor is needed, land is needed, capital is needed, and you also need a businessman or an entrepreneur who is going to take the risk and set up. You take a small cycle shop to a big industry. You need these four, which are needed for producing something, which we call them as factors of production. In capitalistic societies, these factors of production will be under the private control. Okay, so land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur who is going to take risk. Businessman is needed. Now, what Adam Smith tries to say is self-interest is the interest which derives or runs the society, runs the economics. Everything is based on self-interest. For example, if somebody is giving land for doing business, he is giving land for the sake of rent. He's not giving land just like that. There is a self-interest there. If the worker or a laborer is working, he is working for wages. Simple logic. If somebody is giving capital for running business, it is basically for interest. Capital is given for interest. And the entrepreneur, if he is doing business, it is for making profit. So what he tries to explain is everybody works for self-interest. Though everybody is working for self-interest, ultimately it is leading to societal benefit. Ultimately, it is leading to societal benefit, though everybody is working for self-interest. Okay, how? There will be an organization that will be standing, and there are jobs that are created, and this is how the economy gets expanded. This is how Adam Smith says, though the self-interest is there, the self-interest is good, and this self-interest is leading to wider societal benefit. This is what Adam Smith tries to explain when he's trying to explain capitalism. I hope it is clear till here. But at the same time, there is no upper limit for self-interest. There is no upper limit for profit. There is no upper benchmark for self-interest. And because of that, it leads to exploitation. It leads to inequalities. Today, the capitalist is able to control everything possible. This is what is the diagram which you can see there. The diagram which you are able to see there, it is nothing but the dangers of capitalism. So the dangers of capitalism is if a single entity or the business house is able to control every aspect possible, that is going to be a problem, especially in countries like India, developing countries like India. There will be problems. See here, law is also controlled by money. Resources are controlled. Power, chair is controlled. Environment, issues, everything is controlled. Media, everything is controlled by money. So this is what is the dangers of capitalism. Okay, or somebody has written monopoly there. More than monopoly here, though there is no monopoly, what I'm trying to say is monopoly means you have a single seller. Money can control the basic necessities also. When money can control basic necessities, and when you have people who cannot afford basic necessities, then there will be a challenge. In countries like US, people can afford basic necessities. For example, in US, in the election campaigns, there is no discussion of clean drinking water. There is no discussion of electricity. There is no discussion of drinking water tap within the premises. You don't have such kind of discussions. Or sanitation. In a country like India, clean drinking water, there is a discussion. Sanitation, basic necessities, pakka houses, all these are not there in India. So even basic necessities, people are struggling. And if capital link aitunda? No. Now is it audible? Okay. Now it's fine. Yeah. So tomorrow there will not be any problem. So please excuse me for today. Okay. Okay. So till here, I think things are clear. So somebody was asking how capitalism can control law, how money can control law. Simple, ma. You can't buy a lawyer. Okay. So law and order can be easily handled in India. Very simple. Very simple. Judiciary is also a very highly corrupt institution. Okay, fine. Okay, so now before I talk about socialism, so I want, yeah, corruption. So I want to tabulate, or I want to put things here. Purna white paper in the loss. Okay, okay, fine. So let me put the crux. Okay, I'll market economy, connection is lost. Okay, okay, fine. See here. So first of all, I have discussed. Okay, this is something like summarizing what we have discussed. Ma, this is also important. Otherwise, you'll know capitalism. I'm scribbling things off here. Okay, so okay, I'll just. Okay, so what? Okay. Okay, so capitalism, when we're talking about capitalism, I said government regulation will be less. Okay, this is one thing. Capitalism runs on market. So I said market is a place where buyers and sellers meet. Okay. And I said forces of market will decide everything. And the forces of market are, one is demand and another one is supply. Today, I did not discuss any graph with respect to demand and supply. Don't worry about it now. First day, no tension. So market is a place where buyers and sellers meet. And in capitalism, things run based on forces of market. Means production, whether it is production or whether it is price, all these will be decided by the forces of demand and supply. All these will be decided based on the basis of demand and supply, and they are not decided by the government. So government is not going to interfere. Okay. What is the benefit of capitalism? Next thing is there any benefit of capitalism? Yes, definitely benefits are there. So when I'm talking about benefits here after our explanation, so one benefit of capitalism, I'm talking about benefits here, is innovation will be high. Innovation. So you take any best of the best entrepreneur, he is coming from a capitalistic society only, whether it is Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. Scope for innovation, freedom is there. Innovation. Two, efficiency is going to be high. When innovation is there, automatically efficiency is high. See, today we are talking about online mode. In the online mode, I can teach to 2,000 students in one go. That is innovation. So my productivity has increased. Maybe in a classroom, I can teach only to 100 students, but here I can teach to 2,000 students. It shows my productivity has increased or my efficiency has increased. So always research, innovation will increase efficiency. That benefit is always there. Capitalistic societies like US, they have handled poverty better than other countries. Okay, that means to some extent, definitely, yes, though there are inequalities in these countries, but they were able to handle poverty better than others. So US, you can see basic necessities, they are not struggling. Okay, so they've handled poverty, these kind of things better than other countries. Okay, and in these capitalistic societies, they have also created jobs. Well, okay, so of course now losing jobs and all is there, but they have created more jobs than us. Okay, today we are talking about jobs, etc. So when you expand, automatically innovation is there, industries are there, job market is also there. Okay, and one more benefit of capitalism is customer has choice. I have choice, no? So today, if you see, just after independence, there was only one Bajaj Chetak, and the waiting period for Bajaj Chetak was 5 years. Now today I have an option. I can select from multiple scooters, motorcycles, cars. Okay, and if somebody is not giving me proper service or the product is not good, I have choice. So customer also has choice in terms of buying. So free market. So that means this is basically this free market concept is helping in efficiency. It's helping in creation of jobs. It is helping in bringing in efficiency, innovation. All these are benefits which are there in capitalism. Okay, so I think it is clear. Now at the same time, capitalism, there can be negatives also, which I have discussed. Okay, so you can recollect the negatives also. So one important negative of capitalism is inequalities. Okay, second is, I've shown you inequalities, that picture which I've shown you. Okay, inequalities are high. Okay, in capitalism, inequalities are high. Okay, along with that, in capitalism, there is one more problem. Profit motive. There is no upper limit for profit motive. See Vijay Mallya or Nirav Modi out here. Okay, so there is no upper limit. There is no upper limit for profit, and that leads to exploitation. That leads to other problems also. Okay, so that is one more problem of capitalism. Third important problem is capitalism addresses wants. Okay, because demand and supply. So wants are addressed, but needs may not be addressed in capitalism. Needs may not be addressed in capitalism. So in countries like US itself, the problem is hardly 5% of the population was holding 95% of the wealth. 5% of the population holding 95% of the wealth means huge amount of inequality in countries like US itself. Means just think about countries like India. So this is the other side of capitalism, negative side of capitalism. I hope till here things are clear. Okay, so I think somebody has asked this doubt. Sir, can you explain market economy? I think you have understood market economy clearly. Okay, so let's move a little forward and then try to understand one more word here. So that is socialism. Okay, so when I'm talking about socialism, Okay, so there are certain countries which promoted socialism, and erstwhile USSR especially has adopted these principles of socialism. Okay, so in socialism, one famous person who comes to our mind is Karl Marx. He keeps saying all relations are economic relations, and there's huge amount of inequalities, etc., in the society which have to be addressed. And in socialistic societies, what happens is there will be predominance of government. There will be predominance of government. So the economic fundamentals will be handled by government. Government will be handling the economic fundamentals of the country. That means the aspect of production, price, etc., these things will be decided by the government. Now, when is that a particular country decides that socialism is better for it? You should understand that whenever there are inequalities, whenever there is huge disparity, okay, and there is huge chunk of population whose basic needs cannot be met, that is the time when, or whenever a country is in kind of crisis, generally such countries decide to adopt principles of socialism. Now, just after independence, what did India do? Starvation deaths in India. Agriculture was not doing well. We were not self-sufficient with respect to basic food. Education, there was a problem. We didn't have a proper health sector. Our private sector was not developed. Drain of wealth theory, Dadabhai Nauroji, drain of wealth theory by the Britishers. And during that point of time, we adopted, or Nehruji adopted, principles of socialism and not principles of capitalism. Though, of course, our socialistic principles were quite different from the erstwhile USSR, but the principles of socialism which we adopted are those principles. We were very much close. We said, of course, we adopted principles of mixed economy. I'll come to that. But we were more close to socialistic principles. Nehruji did not adopt principles of capitalism. Rather, he has adopted principles of socialism. Though our socialism was a different kind of socialism, it was not same as erstwhile USSR, but our socialism, but we adopted principles of socialism, which is, that means if we see Indian economic, it was, our graph was more closer or more tilted towards socialism rather than capitalism after independence. I think this aspect is clear for everybody. Now, since starvation deaths have to be handled, okay, so health has to be taken care of, education has to be taken care of. Since private sector is not developed, they decided that government will run the economy. That means it is government industries, or it is government which is going to get into business, and government will be the major driver of the economy of the country. This is what we have decided after independence when we were adopting socialistic policies. Of course, we failed. There are different reasons for failing there. Our strategies were a little different. See, Nehruji's policies were something like, so it was a little different from Gandhiji. If you observe Nehruji and Gandhiji, Gandhiji always believed in masses. Okay, and Nehruji believed in technocrats and bureaucrats. Nehruji believed in IITs. Nehruji believed in bureaucracy. And always Nehruji's concept is that the governance or government is very, very complex, which the masses cannot understand. So we need not reveal everything to the masses, because masses do not have the intelligence or knowledge to understand what is happening in the government. So he believed in technocrats and bureaucrats rather than believing in masses. Of course, I'm not saying it is wrong, but at the same time, this was the policy which we have taken, a centralized policy. That means all decisions will be taken at the top and pushed to the bottom. One policy fits all. You take a decision at the top, a centralized policy, and you push it to the bottom. So this is what we call it as the centralized planning, which we adopted after independence, and we adopted something like the principles of socialism, though our socialism was quite different from erstwhile USSR. Okay, so I hope till here things are clear. Okay, so here if you see, this is a diagram which clearly shows that there is a lot of inequalities clearly visible. Okay, so you have the slums on one side, you can see the slums on one side, and you have the big apartments on the other side. This is a problem in India. You want to push them off. Okay, here you have one more diagram where you can see they are trying. So here you can see this boy here, and you can see the restaurant there. It's a common thing which we all observe. See these brands here, and see these people out there. Okay, so this is a challenge. Okay, and here if you see, they're asking for change, and he's throwing the change. Okay, so like this, if you see, if you observe capitalism, there's a problem. So therefore, that does not mean socialism is good. That does not mean socialism will do everything possible. No, socialistic countries also have failed. Understand this. It's not that all socialistic countries were successful. It's not that pure socialism is definitely good. No, that's not the case. If we talk about Kerala today, okay, so Kerala as a state had more of communist ideas, but still unemployment rate is the highest in Kerala, almost like 15%, 14% to 15%. When it was 6% in the whole country, it was 14%. Kerala has highest educated population. Literacy rate is 100%, but unemployment rate is high. Now just understand this. That means there has to be some balance between both of them. There has to be some balance somewhere between capitalism as well as socialism. So remember this. So this is something which you should understand, that the huge amount of inequalities, and when inequalities are there, countries try to adopt principles of socialism. They cannot go ahead with principles of capitalism alone. Got the point, right, everybody? Okay, so now next question to you all is, what do you think will be the problems of socialism? So it's not that if socialism was successful, it's not that socialism, all countries which adopted socialistic policies were successful. Definitely not. There are problems in socialism also. So what do you think are the problems of socialism? Less innovation, less efficiency, lack of technology. Okay, freedom to choose what we want. Okay, fine. Okay, now you can, yeah. Too much of dependence on government. You depend on government for everything. Okay, so you can see this diagram there. Okay, so you can see, okay, so socialism, government is resting happily, citizens are bearing the pain. Okay, and you have the banks taking away money. Okay, you have the banks taking away money from the citizens' pocket. Okay, and you have government happily relaxing. Now, this is a comical way to show you what can happen in socialism. What can happen in socialism, in the sense that just after independence, now let's see, I'll explain. So what happened? Let's take India only. Let's take India and try to understand. Okay, India's case, just after independence, we said government is going to regulate everything. So when we said government is going to regulate everything, okay, bureaucrats and politicians, especially bureaucrats, were very, very powerful just after independence. If you compare a bureaucrat, IAS officer after independence, and compare an IAS officer today, IAS officer was very, very strong. He was almost God just after independence, because government regulation was high. That means for every small business that has to be started, for every small permission you have to take the permission of the bureaucrat. That means for every industry, you need a license. You need a license to start a business. And it was an era of license Raj. So when I'm talking about license Raj in India's case, it means during just after independence, when we adopted centralized policy, when we decided government is going to regulate everything. So it was an era of license Raj. That means somebody wants to do business. Every small business needs license. The amount you have to produce, how much you have to produce, everything, there should be a license. That means what? In the era of license Raj, you cannot expect efficiency. How many Bajaj Chetaks have to be produced if government decides instead of demand? Then automatically efficiency is going to come down. More companies are not given opportunity, means competition is not there. Whenever competition is not there, quality and efficiency will fall. Competition will always breed in quality, increase quality. So when there is competition, when there is threat, you will innovate. For example, Nokia. Nokia was a wonderful company. It was into paper mill business earlier and several other businesses. It used its brain and innovation where whenever needed, it shifted to the mobile business. It was a market leader, Nokia, because of innovation. But later on, what happened? When things were changing, okay, Nokia did not change in line with the business fundamentals. Innovation was not there. In the sense, the operating system has to be changed. Nokia said, we are the market leader. Our battery will go for 10 days. In fact, we are doing research so that our phone, once you charge, for lifetime it will run. We don't need any innovation anymore. We don't need your operating system anymore. Android and all we don't need. We'll manage. That is when Samsung took the opportunity. That is when Nokia is gone and Samsung has come up. So this is what happens. So a company which innovated earlier, which decided to come into mobile phones, later on did not innovate, finish. And today you don't find Nokia anywhere. This is a problem. So innovation is something very, very important to survive. But during the era of license Raj, for every small business, if you need license, to increase your production, if you need license, you cannot expect great entrepreneurs to come. So if you see Dhirubhai Ambani's movie, there is this movie called Guru. Okay, so Guru, Abhishek Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai movie. Basically, you want, you can watch the movie. It's a story of Dhirubhai Ambani, how he has struggled to build business. Okay, how he had to take government permissions, how he had to handle IAS officers, everything is clearly depicted in that movie. So it clearly shows how the era of license Raj has kept innovation down, has created problems with respect to production. There was no competition, and therefore job creation was also a problem. That does not mean India was doing well in agriculture. We were not doing well in agriculture. We were not self-sufficient with respect to agriculture. We were bad with respect to industry during that point of time because of license Raj, lack of technology, lack of innovation. At the same time, we did not have service sector, because our service sector, which we see today, the IT industry, which we see today, the middle class section or the upper middle class, the middle class section moved to upper middle class because of IT industry. And this has happened after 1990s. Before 1990, we did not have a service sector which was doing really well. And that is the reason our financial sector was also very bad. This is one observation which you have to make. Okay, so I think things are clear till here. Okay, so it's not that socialism is always good. Okay, so socialism has its own problems. Okay, there are only few incentives for the business people to take risks. Okay, so that is one major negative. Okay, and brain drain, obviously brain drain will be there. So why is that our engineers want to go to US? Okay, many times some people talk about patriotism, all that, work for India, work in India, make in India campaign. Okay, once they start working in India, they'll understand that it is better you should have gone to US. Now this is the feeling they will get. Okay, so where is the research and development? Okay, if you want to do a PhD, what is the stipend you are getting? So all this decides the research and development, R&D. If R&D is not there, for vaccines, you have to beg other countries today. That is what we are doing. During necessities, we are trying to beg other countries, please give us vaccines. We don't have vaccines, we are dying. You want Sputnik, you want some other vaccine, you need Pfizer. No, where is the R&D? You're not innovating, you're not spending money on research and development. You are at the mercy of other countries during peak situations like COVID. Observe. Okay, so brain drain. And doctors, lawyers, scientists are moving out of countries like India. They are the people who are innovating in countries like US. Simple. Okay. And fewer inventions and innovations because the reward is not great as in capitalistic countries. I'll work hard. I'll do a lot of research for 20 years. And when the product is out, I have to give the money to government. Then why will you innovate? Why will you put in that effort? So these are the negatives which are always there in socialism. Remember this. And that is the reason in India, what we did was we took a middle path after independence. So we took a middle path. So what is this middle path which we have taken after independence is, we said we will, though we are going to adopt principles of socialism, the socialism which India adopts is going to be quite different from the erstwhile USSR. USSR has adopted kind of socialism, but the socialism which we are going to adopt will be quite different from erstwhile USSR. And we are going to come up with principles which we call it as the mixed economy. So we said, fine, we will come up with the concept of mixed economy. So we said we'll take principles of socialism on one side, we'll take the principles of capitalism from the other side. That means you'll take both and we'll come up with this concept of mixed economy. So what happens in a mixed economy is you have both public and private sector moving hand in hand. In mixed economy, you're saying we are going to have both government, public here is government, as well as private sector. Both these sectors will be moving hand in hand. That is called as mixed economy. So we adopted principles of socialism, but our socialism was quite different from other countries in the sense that we adopted principles of mixed economy. I hope it is clear. So we took private as well as public sector going hand in hand. This is what we said. But of course, though we adopted mixed economy, our graph after independence, we were more inclined towards government. You can see all the government sector, government companies prospering after 1947. So private sector, though you said mixed economy, major control was under government. And that is the reason you had issues and problems like license Raj, corruption, all these issues. You want license means just like you will not get license. Okay, so this is how situation was just after independence. I hope till here things are clear. Any doubts you have? This movie somebody has. Yes, no freedom, red tapeism. Okay. Okay, Prajwal, what happened? Mixed economy is not clear. Advantage, disadvantage will come. Communism. So communism, extreme form of socialism. To some extent, yes. Tomorrow we'll decide. We'll discuss on communism. Don't worry. How Indian socialism is different than USSR. Clear, no doubts. Okay. So see, Indian social. See, we adopted principles of socialism only, but we said we will not directly adopt a kind of socialism where everything is under the control of government. So we said we will adopt. We'll take a middle path, like the Buddha's policy. Buddha always says, take the middle path. Okay, so Madhyam Marg. So what we said is, though we are adopting principles of socialism, we will take a middle path. So what is a middle path? It's not that we'll only encourage public sector, that is government sector, but we'll also go ahead with supporting the private sector. So you'll have a combination of both public and private sector moving hand in hand. See, that is the mistake. Is China successful in socialism? Actually, if you observe China, though it looks to be a communist country, there is pure capitalism in China. That is what you should observe. I'll talk about China a little while later. So China, don't underestimate China as a socialistic country. No, it's business fundamentals, it's research, innovations. China is a completely different. You would have read newspapers last few days. So there's a complete article on China, how China liberalized its economy 30 years before India. So that is China. China allowed foreign investors, China allowed private players to enter China, do business in China. And we did it only after 1990s because we were in crisis. So China has done it long back. Okay. Cooperation society. China is a success. Okay. Leap forward period. Okay. Will all that we will discuss, ma'am. We'll step by step we will come to that. Okay. So what is cooperation society? Somebody has written. I didn't get it. What is cooperation society? You're talking about cooperative societies? Praveen. So can you discuss about factors influencing keeping sectors under private or government control, health and education being privatized? See, so if you let's take an example and understand this question. If you take Scandinavian countries like Norway, Finland, okay, in these countries there was a research that was done. What they have done is, in these countries the basic education, basic healthcare is almost free, in the sense it is under the control of government, and it is quality education, it is quality healthcare which is given. Not like India, where you don't find the teacher in the government school, not like the Indian government hospitals where there are no oxygen cylinders. They are completely different. So there, if you observe, in such countries, when there was a research that was done, if you take the example of people who are here, this is a socio-economic class, that is the bottom sections, this is the upper section. When you can provide health and education, when government can provide quality health and education, free basic education should be free and it should be of good quality. Proper health care, if government can do, it is easy for them, easy for this section of the population to move up the ladder. They can move up the ladder faster in these countries like Norway and Sweden than capitalistic countries, or than countries like India. In a country like India, when we talk about healthcare and education, here there is a problem. Though government schools are there, but the quality is not there, or basic healthcare is a problem. So when there are opportunities at these sections, that means these people cannot go to the socio-economic class A. So if you want to move up the ladder, basic education and healthcare, basic healthcare or primary healthcare should be free. And this was done in certain countries which adopted socialism earlier, like the Scandinavian countries. And you find they are the happiest people. And they are the countries where there is tremendous corruption is minimum, their happiness index is high, they're doing a great job. So this is what you should understand. So in countries like India, what is the problem? We say we focus on education, but we hardly spend 1.2% of our total GDP. Of course, I don't want to use this word called GDP here. We spend 1.2% of our total output on health. That's all, very minimum. Very small countries are also spending 3% to 4% of their GDP on health. But countries like India, it's spending only 1.2% of its total GDP. I don't want to use the word GDP because we'll get it later. So out of total output, 1.2%, it is only spending on healthcare. Then imagine the situation. Okay. So the best part should be, I'm not saying that education, health should be completely free. What I'm trying to say is basic education, primary healthcare, high quality, if it can be provided by government, then the poorer sections of the country can reap the benefits of KFC coming in, or you have Microsoft coming in. Otherwise, the poor man here, Microsoft or Apple companies coming into India will not make any difference in their lives, because they do not have basic education and skills. They cannot contribute to these companies. So if basic education, health is there, they don't need any other support in the form of, free rice and free food and this kind of vote campaigns. So you're trying to give them subsidy. See, always remember, whenever you're giving subsidy, government also, subsidies benefit. Okay, there are certain subsidies which government gives, which is something like they have to teach you how to fish rather than giving you fish. So in India, most of the subsidies are giving you fish. So temporarily only they want to satisfy you. So if they teach you how to fish, then tomorrow you're not dependent on them during elections. Now, this is a kind of approach which we have in India, because of which there is a problem. So always remember, this is something which is very important. Okay, so keeping sectors under private, today government's decision is completely to move out of business, except for the critical sectors like the nuclear or the defense. Even defense also we want to privatize. So this is something which you should understand, that government does not want to stay in business. You know, the budget statement itself, government has no business to stay in business anymore, present situation. So that means it clearly indicates that after COVID, government tries to privatize. Government is trying to privatize banks. Government was trying to privatize insurance companies. Government is trying to privatize steel factories, Vizag steel plant, etc. They're trying to privatize. Companies which have failed, like Air India, they're trying to privatize. It depends on the policy. It depends on the policy of the government. But if you give away primary healthcare and basic education to private sector, it is a threat to the country like India. It has to be handled well by government so that it can do justice and reduce inequalities. And even transportation facilities also privatized, like airways and railways. What are the influences of these on Indian economy? Will be privatized. They will go. Okay. They will see here. It is a big question, in fact, in a basics class, like what you are asking. You're saying, what will be the impact? See here, privatizing railways. You're trying to privatize railway related infrastructure projects, etc. You're privatizing. And there is something like core railway operations. Core railway operations, if you are trying to privatize, it is going to increase the cost for the poor man. It is going to increase the goods cost, transportation cost. So, but you're trying to build infrastructure related to railways through public-private partnerships or to privatization, it is definitely good. Otherwise, you have the same stinking railway stations everywhere. So therefore, where to privatize, where to leave things off is a critical decision which the government has to take. Okay, so it's not about railways. If transportation, private, airways obviously has to be privatized. You know what offend Air India is in losses. It's a burden for the government. You cannot spend money on Air India. You cannot spend money on a sinking ship. The ship is sinking and you know it will sink, and still you don't have resources and you cannot push money into a sinking ship. So therefore, if somebody is able to run it profitably, you have to give it to them. There's no other option. And if there is fair competition that is developing, you will find air prices also will come down. This is it. So I'm not saying privatization is good. I'm talking about where to privatize, where not to privatize is a decision that has to be taken by the government at the right time. It's not during COVID scenario you talk about privatization. That is the only logic which I. So in USSR, only Russia has a huge capital infrastructure. Other Soviet nations are struggling to build the economy. Does it mean Russia is dominating the Soviet? See, if you see 1991 plus, after the disintegration of USSR, Russia was also in its own problems. Russia, I'll come to 1991. We did not start only. Okay, so Russia was facing its own problems. So in Russia, what was the issue? So they were struggling with poverty. They were struggling with problems of unemployment, etc. That is when there was a rise of unipolar world. That is when US became the master of the world. That is when there is only one power. So you could see earlier it was a Cold War period. That means you had two powers. One is US on one side promoting capitalism. Then you had the USSR or the Russia on the other side. But after the disintegration of USSR, what happened? It's rise of a unipolar world, one single power, that is US. And that is when India had to implement liberal policies. That is when India had to implement capitalism. That is when India had to become close to US. Simple. Okay. So now I want you all to write down the keywords which I have discussed. Okay, this is what we have discussed. So we have to see, there's nothing like cooperative economics. So here what we talk about is, when we talk about cooperative economics, here we are talking about trying to reduce the forces of capitalism. Okay, we're trying to reduce the forces of capitalism. So that means here, when you're talking about capitalism, how do you bring a middle path now? Do you completely eliminate capitalism? You cannot eliminate capitalism today. Simple logic. Why? Because if you try to jot down top 500 entities, you have companies output more than countries' GDP. You have certain companies outputs more than countries' GDP, clearly indicating companies will dominate countries. This is the scenario today. So you have to forget this logic that you cannot replace capitalism today. You cannot replace capitalism and come up with socialism. That cannot be done. So what is the way out is moral capitalism, which I will discuss tomorrow. So you not use the word cooperative economy here. I use the word called moral capitalism. I take a middle path, or you can call it as benevolent capitalism. Though you are trying towards working towards profit motive, you try to bring a middle path, that is called as benevolent capitalism or moral capitalism. That is where we can talk about. Okay, so yeah, please write down the keywords. Please write down the keywords. Yes, please write down the keywords. One is capitalism. Okay. Then write down market economy. Market economy. Then write down demand and supply. Demand and supply. Then write down purchasing power. Purchasing power. Purchasing power. Okay. Then write down inequalities. Inequalities. Then write down license Raj. License Raj. License Raj. Then write down socialism. Socialism. Then write down mixed economy. Mixed economy. Not many keywords, no. Somebody please type it there. Sir, could you please, somebody, whatever words I have pushed in, somebody please type it there. Capitalism, socialism, market economy, mixed economy, supply, demand. License Raj. That's it. Very few today. No much of, this is basic, these are intro classes, no. So don't worry. We'll try to understand the concept. So we're not going to get into too much of words also. And slowly we'll understand. Okay. Purchasing power. All that. So I hope things are clear. Okay. So tomorrow I'll meet you back at 9:30. Today's topic, you need not read anything because we did not discuss any topic only. Okay, so we've discussed, we started what is capitalism, what is socialism, trying to do the basics part. First 10 days, I will not suggest students to read any book till the basic sessions are over. This is my approach. No point in reading any book. Once the basics are clear, then we can read books. Okay, so that is my approach. So there's no point. Okay, so there's no specific book. You can read NCERTs. People say read NCERT, but I don't suggest now. So wait for some 14-15 hours. Okay, so once that basics is done, then you can take up a book. In economics, you can't take up a book and just read like that. It's little, initially it will create some problem. First sit for the basics and then yes. So tomorrow we'll continue only. We did capitalism, socialism, from where we will get into how India evolved from 1947. Okay, so there we will try to touch the keywords, rupee value, everything we'll try to slowly we'll do. Okay, so we just started off. Okay, I hope you have understood, and I hope the things are clear. Okay, so thank you. So we'll meet tomorrow at 9:30. Okay, fine.